If you enjoyed this audiobook, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the book. Chapter 1. The Price of Everyday Things. Part 1. The Story of Money. Picture this. You've spent the morning fishing and caught more than you need. Your neighbor grew extra grain. Simple swap, right? Not so fast. What if they don't want fish today? Or you need medicine instead of grain? This frustration, called the double coincidence of wants, plagued early trade. Our ancestors got creative. Around 1200 BCE, cowrie shells became currency in China. Their scarcity and durability made them ideal. You'd trade fish for shells, then use those shells for grain later. The shells had no inherent value beyond our collective agreement. They worked because everyone believed they worked. Precious metals solved bigger problems. In 600 BCE, Lydia, now Turkey, minted the first coins. Gold and silver were rare, portable, and hard to counterfeit. Suddenly, a farmer could sell olives in Ephesus, carry coins to Sparta, and buy tools. Standardized value meant strangers could trade without haggling over every chicken or clay pot. Then came paper. In 11th century Song dynasty China, merchants tired of hauling metal. They deposited coins with trusted agents who issued paper receipts, the first banknotes. This paper only held value if people trusted the issuer. When Marco Polo brought this idea to Europe, skepticism reigned. Why accept paper for gold? It took centuries for that trust to solidify. Modern money reveals this contract most clearly. Your $20 bill costs pennies to print. Its worth comes from the full faith of the U.S. government. Digital transactions? Even more abstract. Venmo balances or Bitcoin exist because networks agree on their validity. But trust falters and money stumbles. Post-World War I Germany saw this brutally. As faith in government collapsed, people needed wheelbarrows of marks to buy bread. Money became wallpaper, literally. Contrast that with Switzerland. Their franc's stability stems from centuries of institutional trust, not gold reserves. What's the takeaway? Money isn't metal or paper. It's a handshake between everyone in an economy. That shared belief lets you order coffee with a phone tap today, just as shells let a Bronze Age trader feed his family. Next, we'll see how this fragile agreement shapes what you pay for milk or mortgages. Word count 348. Part 2. Why things cost what they do. Consider your morning coffee. That $4 cup didn't just materialize at that price. It's the outcome of countless decisions stretching from Brazilian coffee farms to your local barista's rent. Prices seem fixed, but they're constantly shifting in a silent conversation between everyone who makes, moves, and buys things. Take bread. A drought hits wheat farms in Kansas. Suddenly, less flour exists. Bakeries bid against each other for what's left, pushing flour costs up. Your neighborhood baker faces a choice: absorb the cost or charge more for that sourdough loaf. If enough customers grumble but still buy, the higher price sticks. If they switch to rice cakes instead, prices might adjust again. This dance between what's available, supply, and what people want, demand, happens daily for every product. Businesses add layers to this foundation. Your smartphone's $1,000 price? Only $300 covers parts and assembly. The rest includes research. Apple spent $22.6 billion developing the iPhone 14 series. Marketing. Samsung's global ad budget topped $10 billion. And profit buffers for risk. Even psychological tricks play a role. Why charge $9.99 instead of $10? Studies show our brains perceive it as significantly cheaper, boosting sales by up to 24%, according to MIT research. Look at airline tickets. A seat on your New York to Miami flight costs $150 today, but $450 tomorrow. Airlines use complex algorithms weighing fuel costs, competitor prices, and even how many empty seats remain. When Southwest entered new routes, their lower operating costs let them undercut rivals by 30%, forcing everyone else to adjust. Taxes quietly shape prices too. Denmark's 25% V8 explains why a burger there costs double what it does in tax-free Dubai. And scarcity? Diamonds aren't actually rare. De Beers' controlled supply and marketing made them precious. Contrast that with water, essential but cheap where it's abundant. Your choices matter in this. When streaming services gained 25 million subscribers during COVID lockdowns, Netflix raised prices, knowing demand outweighed sensitivity. Had millions canceled instead, they'd have reconsidered. Each purchase signals producers, this is worth it. Skip that $6 artisanal toast? Enough no votes might lower its price. Prices are never arbitrary. They're living records of global relationships between farmers and weather, marketers and mines, your wallet and the world. Part 3. Money on the move. Imagine landing in Tokyo, wallet full of dollars, only to find your $100 buys just 14,000ers instead of the 15,000 you budgeted for sushi last year. That shift happening constantly across the globe is money in motion. It's the daily reality of exchange rates, the price of one nation's currency measured against another's. Think of it like a giant global seesaw. When demand for dollars surges because investors see the US as stable, the dollar rises. Your vacation in Europe suddenly gets pricier. If confidence dips, the dollar falls and imported electronics cost more back home. Remember that coffee price hike mentioned earlier? Partly Brazilian frost, partly a weaker dollar making imported beans dearer. This movement isn't magic, it's driven by concrete forces. Interest rates set by central banks are huge magnets. Higher US rates often pull global money towards dollar assets, lifting its value. Trade imbalances matter too. If America imports far more from China than it exports, it needs mountains of yuan pushing the dollar down against it. Political stability, economic growth forecasts, even a major oil discovery all send ripples across currency markets. Picture the British pound plummeting after the 2016 Brexit vote. Overnight, imports into the UK cost more, squeezing household budgets. Conversely, a weaker pound boosted British exports, helping some manufacturers. When money moves within a country over time, its value changes too. This is inflation and deflation, the silent forces reshaping what your cash can buy. Inflation means prices generally rise, so your dollar buys less bread or gas than before. Deflation is the opposite, where prices fall, increasing money's purchasing power but often signaling a sick economy, like Japan's lost decade. What causes inflation? Often it's too much money chasing too few goods. Governments printing cash to cover debts, think Weimar Germany in the 1920s, where wheelbarrows of marks couldn't buy a loaf, is one extreme. More commonly, it's strong consumer demand outstripping supply chains, as seen globally post-COVID lockdowns. Costs pushing upwards, like soaring energy prices after a war disrupts oil supplies, also feed inflation. Suddenly, the money in your paycheck doesn't stretch as far at the supermarket. These aren't abstract concepts. They're the hidden currents shaping your daily life. A strong dollar makes your imported car cheaper, but hurts U.S. factories competing overseas. High inflation erodes savings, quietly transferring wealth from savers to borrowers. A currency crisis abroad can mean your overseas investments tumble. The price tag on that morning coffee? It's a tiny indicator of vast global flows, of oil tankers, factory orders, central bank decisions, and the collective trust placed in pieces of paper and digital digits. Your financial world is far bigger than your wallet. Part 4. A world in your pocket. That coffee you bought this morning? Its price tag holds a story stretching across oceans. Consider the avocado on your toast. A drought in Mexico last year didn't just parch farmland, it shriveled supply. Within weeks, your local grocery store charged more. This isn't coincidence. It's the daily reality of a connected world where distant events land squarely in your budget. Your money isn't just local currency. It's a participant in a vast, global exchange. Think about filling your car's tank. When political tensions flare in oil-producing regions, pump prices climb worldwide. Why? Fuel costs ripple through transport networks. That truck bringing bananas from Ecuador runs on diesel. Higher transport costs mean higher banana prices. Suddenly, a conflict thousands of miles away makes your fruit salad more expensive. This chain reaction is constant, quiet, and deeply personal. Or imagine planning a European vacation. You save diligently, watching airfares. Then, the dollar weakens against the euro. Overnight, your dream trip needs hundreds more dollars. Hotels, meals, museum tickets, everything priced in euros now costs you more. This shift isn't about tourist traps. It reflects global currency markets reacting to interest rate changes in Frankfurt or economic data from Washington. Your purchasing power abroad hinges on these invisible tides. Global brands show this too. A smartphone assembled in Vietnam uses chips from Taiwan designed in California. Its final price? Shaped by Vietnamese wages, Taiwanese tech costs, U.S. innovation spending, and tariffs between nations. Your payment flows into this intricate web, funding wages and investments worldwide. Even your job might depend on it. A U.S. factory worker faces different pressures than one in Thailand, but both influence the goods you buy and the jobs available locally. So what can you do? Start noticing the connections. When oil prices jump, expect grocery bills to follow in a few months. If the dollar strengthens, consider delaying that overseas purchase. Track how major events, a trade deal, a factory shutdown abroad, a new tariff might hit your wallet. This awareness turns abstract headlines into practical signals. Budgeting becomes less about guessing and more about anticipating these global ripples. Your money's value is written in a language spoken everywhere. Learn to listen. Chapter 2. When Prices Run Wild. Part 1. The Ups and Downs of Prices. Consider your morning coffee. Last year it cost $2.50. Today it's $3. That small change reflects a powerful force shaping lives. Inflation. When prices rise across many goods and services over time, your dollar buys less. Its opposite, deflation, sees falling prices. Both reshape economies in profound ways. Think of inflation like a hidden tax on cash. Money saved under the mattress loses value. Workers find their paychecks buy less unless wages climb too. History shows this pattern. After World War II, U.S. inflation averaged 3 to 4% yearly. Workers saw rising wages, but savers faced a slow erosion. The Federal Reserve, guided by thinkers like Milton Friedman, learned managing money supply matters. Too much money chasing too few goods pushes prices up. Deflation brings different troubles. Imagine prices dropping 5% yearly. Sounds great? Not for someone with a fixed mortgage payment. Their debt burden grows heavier in real terms. During the Great Depression, deflation crushed farmers and businesses. Falling prices meant falling incomes, leading to less spending, then more job losses, a vicious cycle. Japan's lost decade showed how hard escaping deflation can be. Moderate inflation around 2% acts like economic grease. It encourages people to spend or invest rather than hoard cash. Businesses borrow for growth, expecting future profits to cover loans. Central banks like the Fed now target this low level, a practice detailed by Ben Bernanke and Frederick Mishkin. It's a balancing act. Fail to control it and inflation accelerates. Squeeze too hard and deflation risks emerge. Spotting these shifts means looking beyond headlines. Core inflation measures exclude volatile items like food and energy, offering a clearer trend. Notice if wages keep pace with prices. Track everyday items, not just coffee, but rent, utilities, or a tank of gas. When news screams cost of living crisis, check the data. Is inflation broad-based or driven by a few temporary shocks? Your choices adapt to this reality. Savings need growth potential to outpace inflation. Think stocks or bonds, not just cash. Big debts feel riskier if deflation looms. Understanding these rhythms helps navigate uncertainty. It's not about predicting every price swing, but grasping why they matter. Next, we'll see what happens when this balance snaps entirely. Part 2. The Wild Ride of Hyperinflation. Picture this. Berlin, 1923. A factory worker gets paid twice daily. His wife meets him at the gate, sprinting to the bakery before his wages lose all value. One afternoon, she pauses to tie her shoe. By the time she reaches the shop, the wheelbarrow of banknotes won't cover a single loaf. This wasn't isolated misery. It was hyperinflation devouring Weimar Germany. Prices doubled every few days. Life savings stored under mattresses became worthless paper. People burned money for heat. It was cheaper than firewood. Zimbabwe faced this nightmare decades later. In 2008, prices doubled every 24 hours. A teacher described buying bus fare at dawn only to discover the same trip cost 50 times more by sunset. Pensioners watched lifetimes of savings evaporate. Supermarket shelves sat empty as farmers refused to sell crops for worthless currency. Desperate citizens bartered soap for eggs, fuel for medicine. The economy didn't just stumble, it collapsed into a survival scramble. What ignites such chaos? Two sparks strike together: political crisis and runaway money printing. After World War I, Germany printed marks endlessly to pay war debts and strikes, flooding the economy with currency. Zimbabwe's government did the same after seizing farms, funding deficits with newly printed trillion-dollar notes. When trust in leaders crumbles, trust in money follows. People rush to spend cash immediately, accelerating the spiral. The fallout is visceral. Savings dissolve overnight, pensions turn to dust, Workers demand wages in food or foreign currency. Barter networks emerge. A doctor trades checkups for potatoes. A mechanic fixes cars for candles. Societies fracture. In Germany, extremism surged as the middle class plunged into poverty. Zimbabwe saw cholera outbreaks and mass emigration. Money, the glue holding economies together, loses all meaning. Governments fear this not for charts, but for human wreckage. Watch for warning signs. Debt soaring past 100% of GDP, central banks buying government bonds directly, or prices rising over 50% monthly. Most critical, when faith in institutions frays. Argentina's 1989 hyperinflation began with riots after the currency lost half its value in weeks. Trust is the dam holding back the flood. Crack it, and the deluge follows. Your coffee grows cold as you read this. That's the point. Hyperinflation isn't theory. It's wheelbarrows of cash for bread, pensions wiped out before lunch. It's the ultimate price of losing control. Part 3. Calming the storm. Imagine trying to stop a speeding train. Slam the brakes too hard, and you risk derailing. Too soft, and it keeps accelerating. That's the central banker's dilemma when inflation rages. In the early 1980s, Federal Reserve Chair Paul Volcker faced this head-on. He raised interest rates to 20%, unthinkable today, knowing it would cause a sharp recession. Factories closed, unemployment hit 10%. But it worked. Why? Because Volcker understood inflation isn't just about money, it's about expectations. People had started believing prices would always rise. Businesses hiked prices preemptively. Workers demanded higher wages. Volcker broke that cycle by making borrowing painfully expensive. Suddenly, buying a house or expanding a factory became unaffordable. Demand plummeted. Prices followed. It was brutal medicine, but necessary. By 1983, U.S. inflation fell from 14% to 3%. Not all interventions succeed. In the 1970s, President Nixon froze wages and prices for 90 days. Short term, it felt like relief. But suppressing symptoms without curing the disease, excess money printing, backfired. When controls lifted, prices exploded. Shelves emptied as producers held back goods, waiting for higher prices. Confidence eroded further. Contrast this with Brazil's 1994 Plano Real. They didn't just tweak rates, they replaced the currency entirely. Crucial detail? They paired it with relentless public communication. TV ads explained the new currency's value. Grocers displayed dual pricing, old versus new cruzeiros. This transparency rebuilt trust. Inflation dropped from 2,500% to single digits within a year. What about everyday people? During Germany's hyperinflation, cities printed their own emergency currencies backed by real assets like rye or coal. In modern Argentina, small businesses often peg prices to the US dollar, creating parallel economies. These aren't perfect fixes, but they reveal ingenuity when official money fails. The takeaway? Taming prices demands two things: credible policy, like Volcker's resolve, and public buy-in, like Brazil's outreach. Miss one, and efforts crumble. Interest rates anchor the technical side. Trust anchors the human side. Get both right, and even the wildest storms pass. Part 4. Lessons from history's roller coasters. History shows that economic stability is fragile. Consider Weimar Germany in 1923. Workers rushed to spend wages within hours because money lost value by the minute. Yet similar patterns emerged in 1990s Yugoslavia and modern Venezuela. Why do societies repeat these mistakes? Often, leaders ignore early warnings while clinging to broken systems. People demonstrate remarkable adaptability during crises. In Germany's hyperinflation, towns issued Notgeld, emergency currency, backed by grain or timber. During America's Great Depression, communities bartered eggs for doctor visits. These grassroots solutions highlight human ingenuity when institutions fail. But resilience has limits. Prolonged instability erodes trust in money, leaders, and neighbors. Policy choices create lasting consequences. The Federal Reserve's hesitation during the 1930s banking crises worsened deflation, turning recession into depression. Contrast that with Paul Volcker's 1980s interest rate hikes, painful but purposeful. His team understood that halting inflation required sacrificing short-term comfort for long-term recovery. 3 lessons emerge. First, preparation beats reaction. Post-War II Hungary experienced the worst hyperinflation ever recorded. Prices doubled every 15 hours. Yet within months, a radical currency reform stabilized the economy. How? By planning while the crisis raged, not after. Second, transparency builds trust. Brazil's 1994 Plano Real succeeded partly by educating citizens through TV segments explaining monetary changes. Third, diversify to survive. Argentinians facing constant inflation often hold assets in dollars or euros, a practical buffer against peso devaluation. Could 2008's housing crash have been mitigated if regulators recalled the speculative bubbles preceding the Great Depression? What if today's policymakers studied Zimbabwe's land reforms, which triggered its economic collapse? History doesn't offer blueprints, but it illuminates pitfalls. Your local bakery adjusting prices weekly isn't just inflation, it's the latest ripple in an ancient pattern. When prices swing wildly, ordinary choices become survival strategies. That's why understanding these cycles isn't academic. It's about preserving dignity amid chaos. Next, we'll explore how individuals can shield themselves when the ground shifts beneath their feet. Chapter 3. The Secret Life of Purchasing Power Part 1. Chasing the Same Basket. Here's how that loaf of bread you bought today connects to a hidden force reshaping your financial life. Think about this. In 1970, a gallon of milk cost about 50 cents in the US. Today, you'll likely pay $3.90 or more. That simple staple tells a bigger story about what your money can actually do over time. Economists use a tool called the Consumer Price Index, CPI, to measure these shifts. Imagine filling a shopping basket with everyday items: bread, milk, eggs, a tank of gas, a basic shirt. The CPI tracks how much that exact basket costs year after year. It's not just about individual prices rising, it's about your money buying less of life's essentials, quietly and persistently. Let's make it real. Suppose you saved $100 under your mattress in 1990. Back then, that cash could buy roughly 40 movie tickets. Fast forward to now, that same $100 might cover just 5 tickets. Your money didn't vanish, but its strength faded. This is inflation's quiet erosion, like a slow leak in a tire. You might not notice day to day, but eventually the ride gets bumpier. Here's an exercise you can try right now. Pick 3 items you buy weekly: coffee, eggs, gasoline. Look up their current prices. Now, find out what they cost 20 years ago. For example, U.S. government data shows gasoline averaged 1.51 cents per gallon in 2004. Today, it's often double that. See the gap? That's your purchasing power shrinking. This isn't abstract theory. It reshapes lives. Consider someone retiring on a fixed pension in the 1980s. At first, their income covered groceries, utilities, and even small luxuries. But as the CPI climbed, that unchanged monthly check bought fewer and fewer goods. Luxuries vanished first. Then basics like meat or heating oil became harder to afford. Choices narrowed. Lifestyle shifted. The CPI isn't perfect. It updates its basket periodically to reflect new buying habits. But it's our best window into this invisible force. Governments and businesses rely on it to adjust wages, benefits, and interest rates. You can too. Online CPI calculators let you test your own costs. Try plugging in your rent or car payment from a decade ago versus today. The difference might surprise you. So what's next? If your money's strength changes over years in one place, imagine how it shifts when crossing borders. Why does that coffee cost $6 in Oslo but $2 in Bogota? We'll follow the journey next. Part 2. The travel tales of a pound or dollar reek. Ever notice how your money seems to change personality when you cross borders? Take that Oslo coffee. At $6, it feels extravagant compared to Bogota's $2 version. But exchange rates alone don't explain this. If €1 equals 25 Thai baht, why doesn't a Bangkok dinner cost 1/25th of a Parisian meal? The answer lies in local realities, not currency math. Think of purchasing power parity as a reality check for exchange rates. It measures what money actually buys in different economies. The Economist's Big Mac Index famously illustrates this. When the euro surged against the dollar in 2008, a Big Mac cost €3.45 in Europe versus $3.57 in the US, suggesting the euro was overvalued by 50% against the dollar. Why such gaps? 3 forces reshape prices locally. First, labor costs differ wildly. Norwegian baristas earn $25 hour, while Colombian coffee farmers might make $2 day. That Oslo cafe passes its staffing costs to your latte. Second, taxes vary. France's 20% that tax 1 or 20 onto that €6 coffee, while Argentina's lower taxes keep prices down. Third, infrastructure matters. Switzerland's pristine roads and reliable electricity cost more than Vietnam's. Expenses baked into Swiss goods. Smart travelers use this knowledge. Savvy backpackers head to Chiang Mai instead of Geneva because $500 covers a month's rent in Thailand but barely 3 nights in Switzerland. Businesses play this game too. IKEA prices identical bookcases 40% higher in wealthier countries. Not greed, but adaptation to local purchasing power. Investors watch PPP gaps. If Egypt's PPP-adjusted GDP per capita is $12,000, while nominal exchange rates suggest $4,000, that signals potential economic growth as prices realign. What if you transferred Oslo's $6 coffee price directly to Bogotá? It would fail immediately. Colombian wages couldn't support it, and locals would brew at home. Real economies resist theoretical exchange rates like antibodies fighting viruses. Next time you travel, compare grocery receipts instead of currency apps. That $20 buys twice as many eggs in Mexico City as in London. The purest measure of your money's journey. These invisible price forces shape everything from vacation budgets to global supply chains. They also remind us that money's value is never static, setting the stage for understanding its slow transformation over decades. Part 3. The Long Game. Consider a family in 1970 setting aside $10,000 for their newborn's college fund. By 1990, that sum, untouched in a savings account, might have grown to $20,000 with compound interest. Yet college costs rose faster. That $20,000 now covered just 1 year at a state university, not 4. The money increased, but its strength faded quietly. This is inflation's quiet theft. Not a sudden crash, but a slow retreat of what your savings can achieve. Money loses strength predictably. At 3% annual inflation, a common modern target, prices double every 24 years. A retirement plan assuming stable costs becomes a blueprint for disappointment. Bonds or cash might feel safe, but their returns often trail inflation. From 2000 to 2020, U.S. cash savings averaged under 1% growth, while inflation ran near 2.4%. That gap quietly shrank purchasing power by over 25% in 2 decades. Some investments fight back imperfectly. Real estate or stocks historically outpace inflation long-term. A dollar invested in the S&P 500 in 1970 grew to about $150 by 2020, overpowering consumer price rises. But timing matters. Japanese stocks peaked in 1989. Even today, they haven't reclaimed that high after accounting for inflation. And safe government bonds. During Germany's Weimar hyperinflation, 1918 to 1923, bondholders watched fixed payments become worthless. Enough to buy a house 1 week, bought bread the next. The remedy starts with a mindset shift. Measure wealth not in dollars, but in what those dollars command. If inflation runs at 3%, aim for 5 to 6% returns to grow real purchasing power. Tools like Treasury inflation-protected securities. Tips. Adjust principal with inflation, but offer lower yields. Stocks introduce volatility, yet historically win the long race. Picture 2 neighbors in 1980. One stuffs $50,000 cash in a mattress. The other invests it in a diversified stock portfolio. By 2020, the mattress money buys what $15,000 once did. The stocks? Likely over $1 million, enough to outpace rising costs. Time doesn't erase risk, it redistributes it. Standing still guarantees loss. This slow dance between money and prices reshapes futures. We'll next explore how to track your personal scorecard, because winning requires knowing the rules. Part 4. Keeping score. Consider Sarah, a teacher tracking her grocery receipts. She notices her $100 weekly haul now costs $117. That 17% jump in 2 years isn't random. It's her personal inflation rate flashing red. You can do this too. Start with your phone. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator takes seconds. Plug in your salary from 5 years ago. If you earned $50,000 then, you'd need $59,500 today just to stay even. Seeing that gap changes everything. Try this monthly ritual. Pick 3 fixed expenses: rent, insurance, utilities. Record their costs. When your landlord raises rent 5%, calculate what that means annually. A $1,500 monthly rent becomes $575. Over a year, that's $900 as extra, enough for a car repair or dental visit. Now multiply that across all recurring bills. Small increases compound like interest in reverse. Here's a rule of thumb worth remembering. The 72 rule. Divide 72 by the current inflation rate to see how quickly prices double. At 6% inflation, 12 years. That vacation fund you're stashing in a low-yield account, its future value just got cut in half before you spend a dime. This isn't speculation. It's what happened to cash savers between 1970 and 1982. Personal benchmarks matter most. Track what you actually buy. Love coffee? Note that $4 latte's price every January. Prefer road trips? Monitor gas and hotel costs for your regular route. When Adam Ferguson documented Weimar Germany's collapse in When Money Dies, he recorded how bread prices changed hourly. You needn't go that far, but monthly spot checks reveal patterns. If your personal basket costs 7% more this year but your income rose 3%, you're losing ground. Watch for stealth erosion. That fixed-rate mortgage isn't fixed against inflation. Your payments stay the same while wages ideally rise. But if your income stagnates, suddenly housing consumes more of your paycheck. Milton Friedman's research showed this squeeze crushed middle-class savings in the 1970s. Today, streaming services quietly hike fees. Gym memberships auto-renew at higher rates. These drips add up. Tools are simpler than you think. Apps like BLS Inflation Calculator or Personal Capital visualize purchasing power trends. Set quarterly reminders. Compare today's prices against your recorded benchmarks. If milk jumped 10% but eggs dropped 5%, analyze why. Knowledge is defense. When Irving Fisher wrote about money's purchasing power in 1911, he proved that awareness precedes action. Your turn. Grab last month's bank statement. Circle 3 recurring charges. Calculate their annual total. Now you're keeping score. Chapter 4. Taming the Invisible Beast. Part 1. Keeping inflation in check. Here's how policymakers walk the tightrope between inflation and growth, and why it matters for your wallet. Imagine trying to drive a car using only foggy side mirrors. That's the challenge central banks face. They must steer the economy by looking backward at old data while navigating forward. Take Paul Volcker's battle in the 1980s. To crush 14% U.S. inflation, he slammed interest rates to 20%. It worked, but factories closed and unemployment hit 10%. Mechanics lost jobs while mortgage holders faced payment shocks. One policy, two very human consequences. Central banks primarily use interest rates like a thermostat. When prices rise too fast, they hike rates. Borrowing costs climb, so people buy fewer cars and companies delay expansions. Demand cools and inflation eases. But turn the dial too sharply, as Volcker did, and you freeze the whole system. Wait too long, like Zimbabwe's Reserve Bank in the 2000s, and hyperinflation turns savings into wallpaper. Remember Adam Ferguson's account. Weimar Germans needed wheelbarrows of cash for bread because delay cost them everything. Modern policymakers often target 2% inflation, not zero. Why? Ben Bernanke's research shows mild inflation acts like grease for economic gears. Wages adjust easier than sticky downward, and it gives rate cuts room to fight recessions. But hitting that bullseye demands art and science. Consider the European Central Bank's 2011 mistake. They raised rates during debt crisis fears, missing how austerity would later drag inflation dangerously low. Data said overheating. Reality whispered, ice age ahead. Communication became a critical tool after that. When the Fed now signals rate plans, markets adjust gradually. Mortgage rates might creep up months before official hikes, preventing sudden jolts. It's why Jerome Powell speaks plainly about pain ahead during inflation fights. Preparing households and businesses softens the blow. The real tension? Policies helping renters might hurt homeowners. Low rates keep mortgages affordable but can overheat housing markets. Higher rates may stabilize prices but risk layoffs. Every meeting at the Bank of England or Federal Reserve weighs these trade-offs in human terms. How many jobs might this cost? Will families default? It's not spreadsheets deciding. It's people judging imperfect data while your grocery bill ticks upward. What if we ignored inflation? Argentina shows us. Decades of 50% annual price surges eroded pensions so badly that retirees resorted to scavenging cardboard for income. Control it clumsily? Japan's lost generation of growth proves low inflation can become stagnation. That's why this balancing act isn't academic. It's the difference between your savings growing or vanishing. Part 2. Our everyday inflation fighters remember Argentina's retirees scavenging cardboard? That's where unchecked inflation leads. But here's the hopeful flip side. While policymakers wrestle with interest rates, ordinary people worldwide are quietly fighting back. Meet Sofia Ramirez from Phoenix. When egg prices doubled last year, she didn't just complain. She joined a neighborhood co-op buying directly from farms, slashing her grocery costs by 30%. Her story isn't unique. It's part of a global pattern of micro-resistance. Look at Japan's price-hunting culture during decades of stagnation. Office workers meticulously track supermarket discount timings. Fish drops 50% after 7 p.m. This isn't penny-pinching misery, it's strategic adaptation. Or consider Brazil's favelas, where inflation once hit 80%. Communities develop barter networks, plumbing skills traded for dentist visits, creating parallel economies untouched by currency devaluation. Your most potent weapon? Information. Apps like Too Good To Go, selling surplus restaurant food at 70% off, or browser extensions that auto-apply coupons demonstrate how tech democratizes savings. During the 2022 inflation spike, Target reported a 15% surge in private label sales as shoppers abandoned name brands. That simple switch, choosing generic over premium, buys real breathing room. Side hustles transform victims into victors. Uber added 1.1 million drivers during recent inflationary peaks. Take David Chen. His weekend furniture restoration gig now covers his San Diego rent increases. It's not about getting rich, he says, it's about refusing to be poorer. Big decisions get sharper under pressure. Harvard research shows inflation spikes correlate with delayed car purchases and increased public transit use. Smart? Absolutely. When Minneapolis light rail ridership jumped 22%, commuters collectively saved millions. These aren't just tactics, they're psychological armor. A Federal Reserve study found households practicing 3+ saving habits, meal planning, bulk buying, utility audits, reported 40% less financial stress than peers. Why? Control. When milk prices soar, knowing you'll save $50 at Costco neutralizes panic. One last truth, inflation exposes waste. Those unused gym memberships? Cancel them. That storage unit holding junk? Empty it. Suddenly you're not just saving, you're earning by eliminating costs. Tomorrow's threats? Asset bubbles. But today's battles are won at the checkout line. Part 3. Bubbles, bursts, and warnings. Remember that gym membership you canceled? Smart move. But what about those shiny assets everyone swears will make you rich? History shows us how quickly sure things evaporate. Consider Amsterdam in the 1630s. Tulip bulbs, ordinary flowers, traded for the price of grand houses. A single bulb of the prized Semper Augustus could cost 10 times a skilled craftsman's annual income. People mortgaged homes and sold businesses to buy bulbs, convinced prices would climb forever. Then, almost overnight, in February 1637, the market collapsed. Bulbs became near worthless. Why? Prices had lost all connection to the flower's actual value or usefulness. They floated on pure belief, a belief that suddenly vanished. Fast forward. The late 1990s saw the dot-com bubble. Companies with no profits, sometimes no real product, saw stock prices soar based on buzzwords and web traffic. Pets.com became infamous, spending wildly on advertising while losing money on every sale. Its sock puppet mascot couldn't save it when investors realized many business models were unsustainable. The Nasdaq index, home to tech stocks, plunged nearly 80% from its peak. Euphoria turned to panic. The warning signs were there. Sky-high valuations divorced from earnings, widespread speculation by inexperienced investors, and the dangerous mantra, "This time it's different." Housing markets aren't immune. The mid-2000s U.S. housing boom saw prices spiral upwards, fueled by easy credit and the belief property values only go up. Lenders offered mortgages to people who couldn't realistically repay them. Complex financial products spread the risk, masking the danger. Economist Robert Shiller repeatedly warned prices were unsustainable relative to incomes and rents. Few listened. When adjustable rates reset higher and defaults began, the house of cards collapsed. The 2008 financial crisis followed, a stark lesson in how debt amplifies busts. Irving Fisher's earlier work on debt deflation spirals proved tragically relevant. Spotting potential bubbles means watching for common patterns. Extreme price surges that far outpace underlying fundamentals, like rents for housing, earnings for stocks, or utility for collectibles, are a major red flag. Surging debt used to fuel purchases is another. Widespread media frenzy and stories of easy riches drawing in novice investors signal late-stage euphoria. Most telling, when skeptics are dismissed as not understanding the new paradigm. As Ben Bernanke and Frederick Mishkin observed, warnings are often ignored precisely when optimism is highest. The psychology is powerful. Collective greed overpowers caution, then collective fear triggers the crash. Protecting yourself starts with skepticism towards runaway prices, understanding the asset's real value, and never betting more than you can afford to lose. What feels like missing out today often avoids devastating loss tomorrow. The next frenzy is already brewing somewhere. Will you recognize the signs? Part 4. The Road Ahead. Imagine buying a loaf of bread in 2045. Will it cost the equivalent of $20 or even $50? The path ahead for your money's value hinges on forces both familiar and radically new. Technology, climate change, and the very nature of money itself are converging in ways that could reshape purchasing power profoundly. Artificial intelligence promises massive productivity gains. Think factories running with minimal human intervention, farms optimized by algorithms, logistics streamlined beyond recognition. This surge in efficiency could drive down the cost of many goods and services, acting as a powerful deflationary force. It's the kind of shift that transformed manufacturing in the late 20th century, but potentially faster and wider. Will these savings reach consumers broadly or concentrate wealth further? Yet, powerful counterforces push upward. Climate change isn't just an environmental crisis, it's an inflation engine. Crop failures due to extreme weather, soaring costs for disaster recovery and infrastructure hardening, and massive investments needed for the energy transition, these will pressure prices for decades. Remember the supply chain disruptions of recent years? Climate impacts could make those seem mild. How will your budget handle more frequent food price spikes or soaring insurance premiums? Money itself is morphing. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are moving from theory to reality. China's digital yuan pilot and the European Central Bank's digital euro project signal a shift. These offer governments unprecedented tools, potentially enabling highly targeted stimulus or even imposing spending limits. While promising efficiency, they also raise profound questions about privacy and state control over spending. Are we ready for programmable money? Geopolitical fractures add another layer of risk. A world less interconnected means higher costs. Reshoring critical industries like semiconductors or pharmaceuticals for national security sounds sensible, but it comes with a price tag. Trade barriers and fragmented supply chains mean less efficiency and higher consumer prices. Think of it as a hidden tax on global stability. So what does this mean for you? Forget crystal balls. Focus on resilience. Diversify your income streams. Skills relevant in an AI-driven world are crucial. Consider inflation-protected assets like TIPS, Treasury inflation-protected securities, for long-term savings, understanding their historical role in preserving capital. Stay informed about digital money developments. Understand the trade-offs between convenience and control. Factor climate risks into major life decisions. Where you live, the property you buy, the industries you work in. Could your career withstand a major climate shock in your region? The future of your purchasing power isn't just about central bank decisions or abstract economic theories. It's deeply intertwined with technological leaps, environmental realities, and the evolving structure of global power and finance. Protecting your financial health requires looking beyond the next paycheck or market cycle. It demands understanding these deep currents and making deliberate, informed choices. The stability of your wallet and the stability of our world are becoming inextricably linked. What steps will you take today to prepare for tomorrow's hidden price tags? Chapter 5. Power Plays and Big Ideas. Part 1. The Legends of Inflation. Here's the section flowing directly from where we left off. Picture a Berlin baker in 1923. He'd raise bread prices hourly, not out of greed, but because his cash receipts lost value before he could buy flour. That's Weimar Germany's hyperinflation. Not just statistics, but people burning money for heat. This chaos wasn't inevitable. It was shaped by choices, often by a few individuals whose ideas collided with reality. Consider Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz. In their painstaking study of U.S. monetary history, they showed something simple yet revolutionary. Inflation is always a monetary phenomenon. When central banks print too much money chasing too few goods, prices soar. Their work, once controversial, became bedrock. But seeing its truth required looking past politics and panic to cold, hard data. Then there's Irving Fisher. He grasped money's velocity, how fast a dollar changes hands. Imagine water flowing through a pipe. Too much pressure? Too fast? The pipe bursts. In Germany, money changed hands frantically, accelerating the collapse. Fisher's insight wasn't just theory, it explained why that baker needed a wheelbarrow of cash for a loaf. But knowing causes isn't enough, action matters. Enter Paul Volcker. Facing U.S. inflation near 15% in 1980, he made a brutal choice: hike interest rates sky high, knowing it would trigger recession and unemployment. Businesses folded, farmers protested, politicians raged. Yet he held firm. Why? Volcker understood credibility. Stopping inflation required people believing he'd stop it, even at immense short-term cost. It worked. Inflation shattered. Contrast this with Argentina's repeated crises. For decades, it printed money to fund popular spending, ignoring warnings. Prices spiraled, savings evaporated. Each time, the human cost mounted. Pensions became worthless, families plunged into poverty. The lesson? Avoiding short-term pain often guarantees greater long-term suffering. Ben Bernanke later drew on this history. His advocacy for inflation targeting, central banks openly committing to a specific low-inflation goal, like 2%, aimed to build the very credibility Volcker fought for. It wasn't abstract. It was learning from Argentina's distrust and Weimar's trauma. Clear rules anchor public faith. So what's the thread? These weren't detached theorists. They grappled with real desperation. Pensioners ruined, workers jobless, shops shuttered. Their ideas succeeded or failed based on tangible human outcomes, not academic elegance. Volcker's resolve hurt, but it saved the U.S. economy. Argentina's evasion deepened its wounds. That Baker story echoes today. When we hear debates about money printing or interest rates, we're hearing new chapters in an old struggle. The stakes: your paycheck's value, your savings security, your job's existence. History's legends remind us, economic choices are human choices, written in the price of bread. Who will the next legends be? Those clinging to comforting myths, or those facing hard truths? Part 2. Global Connections. Remember that baker whose bread prices became a symbol of national inflation? Now imagine his flour arriving from a country where the currency just crashed. That's today's reality. One nation's economic crisis ripples across oceans, turning distant policy shifts into your grocery bill. Consider Thailand's 1997 collapse. For years, it lured foreign capital with high interest rates and a fixed exchange rate. When confidence faltered, investors fled overnight. The baht plummeted 50% against the dollar. Suddenly, Thai imports, from machinery to medicine, doubled in cost. Factories shut. But the shockwave didn't stop there. Investors wondered, if Thailand fell, who's next? They pulled money from Indonesia, South Korea, even Russia. Banks from Tokyo to Frankfurt faced massive losses. A Bangkok currency dealer's bad week became a Korean factory worker's layoff notice. This domino effect reveals a core truth. Modern economies breathe through shared trust. When Greece's debt crisis erupted in 2010, German and French banks trembled. Why? They held billions in Greek bonds. As trust evaporated, borrowing costs spiked for Italy and Spain, even though their finances differed sharply. A farmer in Portugal paid more for fertilizer because Berlin and Paris debated bailout terms. Currency values act as trust thermometers. When Britain voted for Brexit in 2016, the pound dropped 10% in hours. Overnight, imported strawberries cost British shoppers 15% more. That's purchasing power crumbling in real time. Meanwhile, Argentines watch their peso's value swing based on U.S. Federal Reserve meetings, not local harvests. These connections demand cooperation. After 2008, major central banks coordinated interest rate cuts and currency swaps. The Fed lent dollars to Europe. The European Central Bank reciprocated. Without this lifeline, ATMs might have run dry. Yet tensions simmer. When Japan devalued the yen in 2013 to boost exports, South Korean factories lost competitiveness. Quiet currency wars reshape industries and paychecks continents away. We've moved beyond isolated economies. Your mortgage rate might hinge on China's property market. Brazil's drought could lift coffee prices in Toronto. This interdependence isn't abstract. It's in the logistics app tracking ships stuck at Panama, the energy bill reflecting Saudi oil cuts. Next, we'll see how digital currencies rewrite these rules, offering speed but new vulnerabilities. The question remains, Can we build trust faster than crises spread? Part 3. Brave new currencies. Imagine a world where sending money across the globe happens as fast as texting a friend. That world arrived quietly in 2009 when someone using the name Satoshi Nakamoto launched Bitcoin. This wasn't just new tech, it was a direct challenge to centuries of financial tradition. Remember how the 2008 crisis shook faith in banks? Bitcoin offered an alternative. Money controlled by code, not central authorities. El Salvador took a leap in 2021, making it legal tender. Workers abroad could send funds home instantly, avoiding hefty fees. Yet Bitcoin's value can swing wildly in a single day, hardly stable ground for a national economy. Governments watched, then responded. China rolled out the digital yuan in major cities. Picture this: shoppers in Shanghai paying for groceries by tapping phones even offline. The Bahamas launched the sand dollar, aiming to reach remote islands where brick-and-mortar banks struggle. These central bank digital currencies promise efficiency. They could make stimulus payments near instantaneous during crises like getting aid to flood victims overnight. But they also raise hard questions. Should a government see every coffee purchase you make? What happens if the system glitches during a blackout? The convenience carries a privacy trade-off. Beyond big players, communities experiment. Take the Bristol pound in England. Local businesses used this city-specific currency to keep spending rooted in their community. A carpenter might earn Bristol pounds fixing a cafe's chairs, then spend them at a nearby farm stand. It strengthened local ties but faced limits scaling beyond the city. These efforts remind us that money is, at its core, a shared agreement about value. Digital tools change how we record that agreement, not the fundamental need for trust. Volatility remains a major hurdle. Remember the 2022 crash? Cryptocurrency values plummeted, wiping out savings for many who saw it as a quick path to wealth. Contrast this with the steady, if unexciting, track record of traditional currencies managed by central banks aiming for stability. The environmental cost is stark too. Early Bitcoin mining consumed more electricity annually than entire countries like Argentina. Newer systems like Ethereum have reduced this burden significantly, proving innovation can address its own problems. The future isn't just about choosing old money or new. It's about blending the reliability of established systems with digital speed and reach. Think of Sweden's e-krona pilot. It explores digital cash without abandoning the central bank's role in maintaining stability. This collision of tradition and technology is messy, unpredictable, and utterly transformative. The money in your pocket or on your phone is becoming something future generations might barely recognize. What kind of financial world do we want to build for them? Part 4. What would you do? Here's how the world of money could pivot on your next decision. Let's step into 3 moments where real people faced real consequences. No right answers exist in a vacuum, only trade-offs shaped by context. Scenario 1. The central banker's dilemma. Your country faces 15% annual inflation. People struggle buying bread. Raising interest rates sharply could tame prices, but might trigger deep recession, costing thousands of jobs. Lowering rates eases immediate pain, but risks hyperinflation, destroying savings. What's your move? Remember Germany 1923. Printing money to avoid short-term unemployment led to wheelbarrows of cash for a loaf. Or Paul Volcker in the 1980s US. His harsh rate hikes caused recession but ultimately broke inflation's back, enabling decades of growth. Your choice reshapes lives for years. Scenario 2. The family savings crossroads. You live in a country where the local currency loses 10% of its value yearly. Your life savings are in a bank account earning 2% interest. You see neighbors buying foreign currency or even physical goods like land or livestock to preserve value. Converting savings brings fees and complexity. Leaving it in the bank means guaranteed erosion. Where do you place your family's security? Think of Argentinians repeatedly converting pesos to dollars over decades, or Zimbabweans during hyperinflation finding eggs held value better than cash. Your decision protects or slowly dissolves your future safety net. Scenario 3. The business owner's currency gamble. You import materials paid in stable foreign currency, but sell locally in a weakening currency. A 20% devaluation seems possible this year. Do you A. raise prices now, risking lost sales but covering potential import cost spikes? Absorb the initial loss hoping devaluation is mild and you won't scare customers? C. Hedge by buying foreign currency futures, locking in a rate but paying fees? Turkish businesses grappled with this constantly as the lira plunged. Some who hedged survived import shocks, others raising prices lost market share to cheaper imports. Choosing C saved many Brazilian firms during their 1999 devaluation crisis. Your call determines whether your doors stay open next year. These aren't theoretical puzzles. They're condensed versions of choices made daily across kitchen tables, boardrooms, and central banks. Money isn't just numbers in an app or paper in a wallet. It's trust, risk, and consequence made tangible. Your understanding, your vote, your spending habits, they all nudge the system. What price are you willing to pay or ask others to bear for the financial world you want? The next chapter starts with your choices.